Welcome back to America Talks. Thank you again, those of you who are calling and those of you who are patiently waiting on the lines. We do have a very exciting program for you today, and especially because we are going to be showing you portions of this particular movie that is being made on the life of Desmond Doss. And so you will see actual excerpts, little 2-3 minutes bites of this excellent film documentary, which I'm sure you're going to want to see. And but we were talking to Doug Batchelor calling from California, and I'm sure you all feeling the commotion of the election of your new governor. But we were talking, Doug, about again the subject of at hand in regards to non-combatants and time of war and so forth. So go ahead, Doug, you're on the air.
Well, yes, there's very compelling arguments on both sides of this issue, and from the perspective of how should a Christian respond, is there biblical support, of course, for maintaining the attitude of being a non-combatant when the government that you love and have vowed to obey goes to war in what you believe is a just cause? And you can find compelling arguments for that, as well as compelling arguments for a person taking up arms from the Bible. And so this has been a very delicate subject. Even denominations have split over this issue in times of war.
There's, I think, and in talking with Desmond and getting to know Desmond, there's something that I've learned in actually talking to some of the other conscientious objectors that I've met. It's hard to, because you're right, there are biblical examples on both sides. But you mentioned something earlier that I think that's very key, and that is, what is your personal conviction? This is about your personal conviction. You cannot mandate, either government, denomination, or any other body, you cannot mandate what somebody's personal conviction is going to be. That is something that is very personal, and that is who you are made up of, and that's part of your character. And Desmond, and using him as an example, when you ask Desmond, well, what about these biblical examples of thousands and tens of thousands of people being slaughtered? Well, Desmond says he took that sixth commandment to mean, Desmond, if you love me, you won't kill. He didn't try to convert anybody else around him to that way of thinking. That was his personal conviction, and I think that's a very important contrast to make to government saying, you have to bear arms.
Okay.
Absolutely, and as you look through the characters in the Bible, it's interesting to evaluate now what would they do. Of course, everyone knows that David went into battle trusting in the Lord, loving the Lord, and yet he was armed. And but then you find people like Elijah and Elisha who had the power of God, but they never raised their hand to defend themselves. And there's a lot of dynamics that you can see play out in this.
Bob?
Doug, this is Bob Abrahamson. Do you have any white coat participants in your church?
Not that I know of right now.
Okay.
We have several families that have young men and women that are serving in irregular military.
I would imagine you probably do have it. They're just not known. There's one at Pasadena, or at Paradise, I know. But I'm sure there's got to be some in Sacramento.
There probably are.
Yeah. They just haven't stepped forward and said anything, I think.
Bob Abrahamson here, former mayor of the city of Gentry. He is a former white coat, or I don't know if that
That's right.
nomenclature comes to you forever, white coat.
Probably, yeah, it probably does.
Probably does, and served distinctively our nation in that capacity on Fort Detrick, and recently came back from the East Coast where they had a reunion of all the white coats, and so we are honored to have Bob with us, and again, in a capacity of non-combatant, you serve the nation very well, and putting your life on the line.
And let me say, and Doug, I think, kind of hit on this, there has been no reprimand against any Seventh Adventist who took up arms. That is a personal choice. Even when you're in the service, you can do that. However, most medics, even in regular service, non-combatants, do not carry arms because they just don't have time to fiddle with having a weapon on their side. Yeah.
Well, that is a good point that you bring up about that. I am sure that there will be other denominations that can also maybe bear the same, in your particular case, being on a Seventh Adventist, there will be others that would be of other denominations that perhaps were also blessed with the same opportunity.
Well,
Yes.
I wondered, there may be some folks listening who haven't heard about the White Coats before, and maybe you could just briefly tell us what they do.
Okay, in about 1953, there was a lot of research going on at centers, and the government was having difficulty getting people to participate who were non-smokers, non-drinkers, non-druggies, this type of thing. So the Seventh Adventist Church and the U.S. Army got together and recruited the Seventh Adventist boys who would volunteer to do that for experiments in biological germ warfare. At Fort Detrick, there was around 2,400 of us who, over the 19 years, volunteered. But again, it was totally volunteer. You could get out of it the last minute if you wanted out, but they were trying to find people with basically the same education, the same living habits, and they found that the Seventh Adventists fulfilled that. And I can't remember if one of the presidents or someone in high office recognized that and said, hey, here's a group of people that we think would fill this bill if they're willing to do it. So it was an agreement with the U.S. government and the Seventh Adventist Church.
Okay.
You were in the medical corps, and then you
Medical
volunteered
corps, right.
from the medical
Right.
corps.
They recruited out at Fort Sam Houston, where
Okay.
most Seventh Adventists go through. They would come down and recruit.
Was that in the Korean conflict?
It was right after, well, actually 1953. I guess Korean War ended when? About 1953?
53.
Yeah,
53,
about
yeah.
the time it ended. And they knew there was germ warfare going on, and they were trying to find ways to combat that, and they needed human subjects to do the testing.
Amazing.
One correction, I'm not sure the Korean War has officially ended.
You may be right.
But technically, too, it's
It
not
was
even
not
a
a
war.
war.
but
Yeah.
It was a bandit
Conflict.
raid.
That's right.
Conflict.
United Nations of police action.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Doug, for your comments tonight.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to show support for the program and call in with a couple of inexpensive opinions.
Well, we appreciate your calling,
Thank
and
you, Doug.
look forward to receiving your call again next week or whenever it's convenient for you.
All right, we'll probably have a new governor by then. And God bless.
God bless.
Thank
Terry, let's go on with the subject here. We showed the executive order that recognized conscientious objectors in 1940, September 16th, and then we were making the comment to the fact that, can you imagine in the particular case of Desmond Ford here, excuse me, that has to face now his captain, his sergeants, and saying, I'm not going to bear arms, you know. Now, it's my understanding that actually that was part of it was in his document when he was accepted in, is that correct?
Right. Well, in fact, in the documentary, we have the document that shows that he was classified 1AO. So he went in knowing that he was going in as a conscientious objector, and Desmond likes to call himself a conscientious cooperator, and that's what he tried to give himself the label, or as a non-combatant. But the Army wasn't going to have any of that. They were going to test him as well as others to see if these guys were truly convicted. Now, whether some of their methods were right or wrong, I mean, that's up for an opinion. But I think that in Desmond's case, being in the 77th Division, that division trained longer together probably than any other division in World War II. They trained for 2+ years before they ever saw action, and that was through a series of decisions that were made in trying to train a division in its as a full division together, and that hadn't been done before in previous conflicts. So Desmond suffered through 2+ years of harassment and abuse and that, and actually one of the clips I brought
Why don't we show a little bit of that?
is a confrontation he had with a captain who was literally physically going to force him to touch a weapon.
Okay, let's take a look at that clip number 2 here.